Hello everyone! Today I'm going to discuss is the Buddhist concept of suffering pessimistic. Suffering is the first noble truth of four noble truths. Since the world is impermanent, dependent co-arising, no self, the truth of the world is suffering. However, Buddha offers the path of awakening through practicing Noble Eightfold Path, Sila, Samaddi, Piya. In my point of view, suffering is not pessimistic, but wisdom for us to surrender the truth and pay action to go through the suffering. The truth of life is suffering, is Dukkha. Firstly, everything in the world is impermanence and dependence co-arising. Everything in the world will face destruction, vanishing, fading away, cessation, and change. The reason is that the determinants that determine to feel are impermanent. To observe our human's life, birth is suffering, aging is suffering, illness is suffering, death is suffering. Displeasing is suffering. Separation from what is pleasing is also suffering. Not to get what we want is suffering. No matter materials and cessation in the world or our body, we cannot deny that everything is impermanent, is dukkha, is suffering. Moreover, grasping five holding aggregates, matter, feeling, perception, determination, and consciousness are suffering. This is the first noble truth. All determinants are suffering, no matter whatever is felt that counts as suffering. So, seeing the five aggregates of clinging taken as self are suffering. Secondly, no self is suffering. The worldly person, not seeing impermanence, falsely sees experience as pleasurable by taking it to be I, mine, and self. The worldly person's nature is to perceive impermanent things as pleasurable and as permanence because he takes them as self. The Buddha's teaching flatly contradicts him. If you rightly see things as impermanence, you will then see them as suffering and no self. Consequently, all clinging to beliefs or view regarding self will cease, and the right will charge in. What arises is dukkha, what persists is dukkha, and what ceases is dukkha. So dukkha is the door to opening the awakening path. Briefly concluded. Perception of pleasurable, unpleasurable experience, permanence, impermanence, self and no self are suffering. By observing the world, we cannot deny what Buddha said. What important is that do we dare to face the truth? I understand that sometimes we're tired and afraid to aware that life is suffering. Our egos prefer to crave matter and feelings in different life experience rather than to admit and face our suffering deep inside. It seems our mind is decided to love poisonous food rather than mindful food. Is that true? However, luckily, it's one who sees dukkha, sees as the arising of dukkha, the cessation of dukkha, and the path leading to cessation of dukkha. To see dukkha is important wisdom. In the past, we didn't know what we were doing. We were controlled by the five holding aggregates. Now we can start our spiritual practice. Buddha offers the path to awakening, the Noble Eightfold Path. Now we can practice right understanding and seeing things as they really are. Now we surrender, totally agree, and accept what Buddha said. We can have mindful practice and start our sadhana life practicing Sila, Samaddi, and Piya, cultivating 10 parami. Actually, Buddha's teaching is positive and practical, offering a way to teach us how to cease suffering and leads us to liberation. It is not pessimistic, but wisdom to admit that what is impermanence, that is suffering, what is suffering, that is no self. Now we can commit our life to practice mindfulness to go through the suffering. The Buddha's teaching of suffering could be considered pessimistic if he point out only the suffering. When the five holding aggregates taken as self are seen to be suffering, the concept of pleasurableness vanishes, with less clinging vanishes. The experience now becomes the five aggregates considered to be no mind, no I, and no self. To conclude, the aim of the teaching of action, karma, impermanence, anicca, suffering, dukkha, is partly to stir up positive attitude in people, to drive them to act for their spiritual and moral well-being, to have inner transformation, and have the end of suffering and real liberation. Sincerely, I hope everyone has peace and joy. Thank you.